Invincible Season 4 has concluded, and some people even think that the show is falling off. But we all understand that this delusion has to stop. This season had arguably even higher peaks than anything else before that. Even the gore received an upgrade. Yes, I'm talking about episode 5. So today I'm gonna break it down, and also since I read the comics, I'm gonna compare the series to it. So without further ado, let's go. Starting off with our main character, and I just love to see all this. And yes, as a comic reader, I know that he goes even further than that in the comics, believe me. Next couple seasons are gonna be insane in terms of his character change. But to see him going from the kid that was afraid to hurt others in any way, always holding back, and then realizing his true strength, then losing control and going for his first kill against Anstrom, then fighting this side of him for the entirety of the 3rd season, and then, after the fight with Conquest, coming to a conclusion that leaving people like this alive is just irresponsible, and from now on, he will not hesitate to kill, if necessary. And then he acts on it the very first episode of this season, leaving everyone in shock, including me. And the thing that was bugging almost everyone since the start of the series, Mark always being weak. It's finally a thing of the past. Well, kinda. Because technically he's one of the strongest now, that's for sure. Even if you don't believe that he's stronger than Conquest, he was still somewhat comparable to him. And right now, he's arguably top 5 in the verse. Sounds cool. Sounds like he soon might be the strongest, and regular villains are definitely not the problem for him, right? Well, I got some bad news for you. This gimmick is always gonna be there, according to the comics at least. Mark's strengths will only play a part when he's fighting someone around his power level or higher. But if they're much weaker than him, in the comics, the author still conveniently forgets that his main character is... and he still gets thrown around by random villains. Maybe a bit less, but it's still there. I mean, they might change it in the show in the coming seasons, but I really doubt it. At least now he can fight off the actual threats, which is something, and I'm not gonna lie, it still makes me happy. It was so funny to see all the show fans crash out and call Thragg a fraud when I knew what was gonna happen the next episode. All the people that were talking about his emotional support skull shut their mouths really fast when he no-diffed all the strongest people in the verse at that point by himself. The funniest thing is that the show made Thragg even stronger than in the comics, which is so absurd but also perfect. And his voice and his design, everything that people were throwing at him went out the window, and the voice is perfect. He's commanding when he needs to be, he's scary as hell when he's angry, and it's low enough for me for sure. As far as design, the thing is, some people probably know this, some probably don't, but the thing is, there are 2 artists for Invincible comics, Corey Walker and Ryan Ottley, and the art for the show was made by Walker, even though Ottley drew the majority of the original series. But to say that in the comics Thragg looked different would be kinda incorrect. Rather, in that particular arc, he looked different, because, for example, here's the panel of him in the comic looking exactly the same as he looks in the show. But which art style is preferable to you is a totally different question. But for me, it's alright. I prefer for the compositing and the animation to be better, to be honest, than the art style changed, which is another thing that I want to cover. I remember watching the trailers and people hyping up the animation, making edits of all the impact frames, and I was really starting to believe that it would become better, the animation would become better. But as we all know, I and all the other people that were expecting it were wrong. I would even say that the previous season was more impactful as far as animation, because it's always about the big episodes for me, and I feel like the finale of season 3 has better animation than season 4 episode 7, which is kind of the actual true big finale in terms of like fights and everything. Season 3 finale was just more consistent. Every fight scene looked at least good, while in the end of episode 7, some fight scenes were really lazy and stiff. So I guess it is official. I don't think we should expect any improvement in animation from this show in general. Better shading at least would make it look so much better and not as cheap, but they don't have time to do so. Some might say that Amazon should stop treating Invincible like an indie show and give it more budget, and I probably agree with you. But the thing is, to affect their decision making, we as the audience need to start like boycotting the show and stop watching it, which is a hard decision, and like for me personally, I just want to see the show and I don't want to deal with all that, and I hope you can forgive me for that. So, with all the basics covered, now I actually want to go over my favorite episodes of the season, and some of them might even surprise you and even make you leave some angry comments, but I have to do it nonetheless. Okay, so before I cover my top 3, there is one important detail that I have to mention. As I said before, I read the comics. Not fully though, meaning I started after season 3, aka issue 62 if I'm not mistaken, so I have read like a bit more than the first third of the comic. And yes, this was the first season I saw already being aware of all the major plot points, and it was a bit weird to watch if I'm not gonna lie. Part of me even felt sad for not being able to experience everything all at once. Even though I don't regret reading the comics, it was still great. And so, as a result, that means that I knew most twists and plot points going into season 4, and my impressions or rankings of certain episodes that I'm gonna talk about a bit later might look a bit different than yours if you're not a comic reader, because I might like the episodes that changed a lot compared to the comics more than the ones that stayed true to it. So yeah, let's start off the top 3 with an honorable mention, the episode that for some reason only I liked, I guess. I know that many people hated episode 4, but I honestly loved it for what it was. It was hilarious. The way Demian Darblood talks, Satan that looks more like a cheap copy from Temu rather than the actual one. And finally, I think for the first time we saw Mark dealing with a big and bad boss effortlessly. Volcanica was made into a joke. And also it being basically a filler is also a good thing for me personally, because I didn't see it coming and me knowing the plot of the comics didn't make a difference. Of course, I don't think this episode is 10 out of 10 or anything, but I definitely had a good time with it, and I'd say that it is placed here not because it is better than all the other episodes that didn't make it in my top 3. It's rather that I wanted to praise it a little bit because, well, no one does, and it deserves at least some praise. And now let's get into the actual top 3, starting off with... Finale is in the 3rd place, and this was technically the weakest finale in all the series. No huge fights or extremely emotional moments here, but just the tension alone. And from the writing standpoint, it was perfect and made total sense. And it made the changes to the comic that are all great. In the comic, Mark met Thragg basically right when he arrived to Earth, and then all the other things happen after. But in the show, they build up to it perfectly, raising the tension to the absolute peak, showing Mark slowly losing his mind. Also, Debbie continues to be a great character in this episode, showing that she will put up even with Nolan if it's for her sons. Easily 2nd best episode for her character development. After episode 5, of course. So yeah, decent amount of changes from the comic, and as a result, I loved it. The only thing I wanted them to drag out is Mark's fantasies about Viltrumites killing everyone. I really wanted that section in the beginning to be much longer, so it can fool the audience much more effectively. Well, it wouldn't fool me, it would be still great. But nevertheless, they still delivered. And to be honest, when I first read the entirety of the Viltrumite War in the comics, I was really confused, because you would think that something like this would happen in the end of the series, right? But it happens in the middle, and it ends not with someone's defeat or victory like you would expect, again, like a battle series. It ends with a truce, putting all this on a pause. And this move right here is the clear example of why I love Invincible. The plot is really unpredictable in its own weird way. You would never guess what is going to happen next. It is so random, but so logical at the same time. I just can't help but praise the series for it. Now, a lot of people have this one as their best episode of the season and even the series, and rightfully so, but as I said, my criteria are a bit different. Since episode 7 was mostly faithful to the comics, plus I remembered all those scenes really well, it didn't surprise me this much. Or rather it did, but not as much as it could if I went into it spoiler-free, obviously. Because Thragg did the exact same thing to Nolan in the comics, putting a hole through him. And he did the exact same thing to Thaddeus, ripping his hat off, and Oliver as well, ripping his arm and jaw off. And I knew that the destruction of planet Viltrum was coming, even though it did look really great. But me knowing the plot beforehand aside, this was still an amazing episode. Thragg showed everyone why his voice actor is great and that Thragg himself is an apex predator and literally 10 tiers above everyone else in the coalition. Well, besides a certain someone, comic readers already know who I'm talking about. Plus, the changes that were made are only improving the story once again. Thragg was not only made even stronger in the show, but he was also made more reasonable, actually trying to talk to Nolan before going off against everyone. He doesn't just feel like an empty, strong, big boss that we are supposed to be afraid of. He gives an impression of a strong leader that has a weakness, and that weakness is his people. He cares about them and their survival more than anything in this universe. And as a result, him sparing Mark and Nolan in the end makes total sense and also makes him an even better character. But no matter how great this episode was, for me it wasn't the best. It was great, but the emotions that the #1 episode gave me are practically second to none when it comes to this entire show. I mean, this silence and this expression is the most accurate representation of my reaction to this episode. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. But let's start from the top. This episode made many changes to the comics, and it starts with the first half of the episode that is super calm and collected. We see Nolan go around the Earth and apologize to everyone. And here comes the first change from the comics in this episode that was really important. Debbie does not forgive Nolan. And this made me really happy because in the comics she did, but she's a different character in the comics overall. Debbie in the show is much stronger mentally than her comic counterpart. And Nolan's realization that he can't fix everything so easily hit a bit too hard, but we all understand what he did and we all know that he deserved all this, and honestly, he deserves much more than that. Also, another change to the comic was Tag Jack's gender swap, and I don't see any problems with it really, because before that in the comic, for me, he didn't have much character anyways, besides being occasionally cool, but overall, he looked like a Mark variant in a tech suit. Then we finish up with the slow part of the episode and get into the ending, and for me, it was the contrast between the first like 85% of the episode and the last 15. It is just ridiculous. I always loved Invincible for the contrasts it shows, to the point that you really can't believe that you're witnessing something so unorthodox. But this episode takes it to another level, with first half being so peaceful while being perfectly written and having great character moments, and the second half being, well, basically the bloodiest fight in the series. And now for the fight. This was the part that was really different in the comics too. I knew that this scene was coming and I was expecting the brutality to be comparable to the season 3 finale, but nobody prepared me for this. In the comics, Conquest still punched the hole through Mark, and then there was literally one panel of him reaching for his guts and pulling them out, and a panel of Mark hurting really bad, obviously, and then Conquest slowly rolls his eyes and dies. That was it. I was afraid that the show might make it a bit less gory, but, well, I don't need to tell you that it wasn't the case. Easily the most brutal fight in the series. And to be honest, it wasn't even a fight, it was a death match. No time wasted, no dialogue, no unnecessary punches, no R farming, no music even, nothing like that. It was actually a great representation of how this type of fight would go down in real life. This is what it would look like if two men decided to kill each other at any cost. And it was brutal. The rules were simple. The last one breathing is the victor, and Mark swore that Conquest would never breathe again. And he kept his word. Honestly, it is definitely in a conversation for the best episode of the series, and it undoubtedly is the craziest episode in the entire show. So yeah, no matter what some of you might think, Invincible is still on top, and Amazon gave us another wonderful season. I hope they can give us better animation, but never mind. And if you haven't read the comics, believe me, you don't even know what the next couple of seasons have in stock for you. So be patient, and Invincible will not disappoint. Subscribe for more anime and not only content, and see ya!